If you are interested in weight gain, obesity, just how to manage your weight in general, we are going to dive into that today and have just a really good discussion. I'm excited to give you guys some information about this to hopefully give you some tools and just knowledge about these things going into 2023. A lot of us have fitness and health goals, and especially when it comes to fitness resolutions, weight gain, specifically weight loss is usually something that is a high priority for a lot of individuals. So hopefully this will give you some good insight in all those different things, and let's get started. Before we even begin though, I want to know what are you currently dealing with when it comes to weight gain? So please comment, let me know, are you trying to gain weight? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to maintain weight? We all have different goals. I'm curious, so please let me know. So as we discussed, this is going to be about obesity, weight gain. To kind of begin this discussion, we're just going to talk about weight gain in general. So if we look at right here, what is weight gain? What does it mean to gain weight, right? This is something that a lot of people get confused about, and weight gain essentially is an increase in body weight. And I know what you're saying, duh, Logan, weight gain. But this can actually become from a variety of reasons. It isn't necessarily from strictly fat, which a lot of people think. It can also come from lean body mass too. So if you gain weight, you can also gain weight from water. You can gain weight from muscle. Your organs can gain a little bit of weight. Your bones can gain a little bit of weight. The tendons and ligaments and connective tissue can gain a little bit of weight, should add to the weight gain in your body. And these are all considered lean body mass things. A lot of times when people start losing weight, specifically on a lower carb diet, they will lose a lot of weight initially, but this body weight isn't lean body mass. Usually a lot of times it's water weight, which I guess technically is what we consider lean body mass, but it's not the type that we're trying to lose. We're trying to typically lose or monitor the overall fat mass on our body. Which brings us to the next portion of weight gain, and that's fat mass. So there's actually a few different types of fat mass to consider. The first one is subcutaneous. That's the fat we normally see around our body. So subcutaneous would be just the fat under your skin. Sub is under and cutaneous is under the skin. So subcutaneous fat. There's also visceral fat. This is the fat that a lot of us are trying to avoid. Visceral fat is fat that's actually around the organs in our body, or potentially could be around the organs in our body. And what this fat actually does is it increases inflammation long term in your body. So that chronic inflammation that leads to heart disease, diabetes, all these other chronic disease issues that we're ultimately trying to avoid to live a healthier life. The visceral fat, when you have too much of that in your body, that's actually causing that chronic inflammation. And this is often seen in the people who have a lot of fat around their midsection. So the fat not only is subcutaneous around the midsection, but it actually goes a little bit deeper. So it goes deep into your body around your organs, which is not a good thing. Last type of fat mass that might lead to weight gain is essential fat. So essential fat is kind of what it sounds. It's the fat you literally need to just survive. So believe it or not, you cannot be 0% body fat. When it comes to essential fat, this kind of goes different between people to people depending on genetics and how well they can handle being at low body fat. But most people, about 2 to 4% would be considered as essential body fat. So you would need ideally at least 4% to stay alive. And these are for things like maintaining your hormone regulations, giving you a little bit of extra necessity fat in case you are dying, right? So these are the people who get super, super low in body fat. Most individuals in the general population don't ever get to a point where they're only have their essential body fat left. But just know that when we're talking about weight gain, those are the different types of fat mass you could be gaining weight from. And in addition to that, you can also be gaining weight from lean body mass sources like water, muscle, tendons, organs, bones, all these different things. So that's kind of the first thing. What is weight gain? So the next thing we're going to discuss is about weight loss. So we discussed weight loss, we discussed weight gain, but now we're going to dive into weight loss. Specifically, how does weight loss happen? How does weight loss happen? This is something that people get paid a lot of money to help individuals with, and I'm going to hopefully give you some good guidance on it as well. So weight loss, there is no special diet, there is no special pill, there is no special exercise. Weight loss happens from a calorie deficit. This is energy balance. So when you think about thermodynamics, basically law of conservation, nothing can be created or destroyed. So essentially, when we're talking about calories, we need to be eating less, as in taking in less food than we burn on a day-to-day basis. That's weight loss. It doesn't matter what kind of foods you eat. It could be burgers, it could be fries. You could eat these foods as long as your calories are in check, you will lose weight. And this is something that blows a lot of people's minds. And I'm also going to say that you shouldn't just go and eat a bunch of junk food, right? That's not what I'm recommending. You can fit that into your diet and know that as long as your calories are in check, it's actually not going to decrease the amount of fat you're going to lose. It'll make it a little more challenging because a lot of the foods that are considered junk foods are not very satiating, not very filling for us. So they're very easy to overeat. They're also usually very high in calories. So they're harder to maintain the overall calorie goal that we need, but you can still eat essentially anything within reason and still lose weight. So I always like to give the 2,500 calorie example. Let's say you burn 2,500 calories a day. This is kind of an average for people. Most men are probably around there. Most females are probably around 2,000. Let's just say 2,500 calories per day. And if you start eating 2,000 calories per day, as in 500 calories less, by the end of that week, you have eaten 3,500 less calories per day than you burn. 3,500 calories is what is in 1 pound of fat. So if you do this, as in eat 500 calories less per day, at the end of a week, you lose hopefully a pound of fat. But as we just discussed in the weight gain section, weight gain and weight loss isn't strictly fat and it isn't strictly muscle. It's going to be a combination of the both. Ideally, you would have the least amount of muscle mass lost, least amount of lean body weight lost, and have the most fat mass. But even when you are very, very strict with it, usually you lose about 66-ish% of your body weight from fat mass, and then the other little bit's going to be from combination of different types of lean body mass. So that is that. So weight loss is calories in versus calories out. And one of the things I forgot to put in the comments, but you can actually find these calorie calculators online. I like the NIH one. You can just type in your body weight, your activity level, and it'll tell you exactly how many calories you need to lose weight, gain weight, whatever your goals are. Very good. Okay, so as we mentioned, calories in versus calories out, that dictates weight goals. So let's talk about how we can get calories in. So in other words, how is energy taken into our body? And you're probably saying to me like, Logan, this is really, really easy. It's the food I eat, right? And that's 100% true. The food you eat is how you get energy. But I do kind of want to break this down a little bit to hopefully make you realize that all food isn't totally equal. So when you eat food, it's actually comprised of 3 macronutrients. These macronutrients are carbohydrates, they are protein, and they are fats. And when you eat a specific food, usually a lot of times it's comprised of all 3 of these. Not always, but for the most time, especially if you eat a full meal and you say you eat like a casserole, that's going to have both proteins, carbs, and fats. So when you eat a meal, your body needs to digest these different macronutrients to actually break down what we need to use them for. So carbs, when broken down, they basically become stored energy. So they get stored into glycogen in the liver and muscles. This is your body's preferred energy source. You can get it rapidly. It helps with high intensity activity and even just regular activity. But your brain likes energy. It uses a lot of energy. So carbs, when you eat these, are actually going to be basically your body's preferred energy, especially if you're an athlete or somebody who's physically active. Important thing to know. The next thing is fats. These help with cell transport. They help with energy production, obviously. They can be stored in your body. They can help protect cells. And they also help to keep your brain and heart healthy. As we know, eating those monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats are really, really good for your cholesterol, the good cholesterol, I should say, or your HDL cholesterol, which you want high. Those things help tremendously keep those things in check, which help your heart health. Protein, last macronutrient, is 4 calories, and I always describe these as the building blocks of the cell. They literally help to build and repair everything. So it's not just muscle when you think of protein. They help to build the membranes in your cells. They help to repair cells, skin, hair, all these different things. These are all protein. Anytime you're breaking something down, which happens with your cells literally all the time, and you need something to be repaired, protein will help with that. Also, protein can be used as energy, although it is not preferred. It's through a process called gluconeogenesis. This is a process usually what happens when people are in ketosis or are eating a low-carb diet, where protein is actually converted to energy. This isn't preferred. You probably have never gotten under this point in your life. However, if you have ever experimented with a keto diet, you very well could have. So I forgot to mention, when it comes to the different types of macronutrients, so carbs, protein, and fat, they actually have different amounts of calories per macronutrient. So carbs actually have 4 calories per gram of a carbohydrate. Fats have 9 calories per gram, and protein has 4 calories per gram. And you'll probably notice that fats have nearly, actually over double the amount of calories per gram compared to carbs and protein. This is why if you have like a tiny bit of olive oil and you notice it on a plate, you're like, oh, that's probably not that many calories. Actually, like a tablespoon of olive oil is about 120 calories, versus if you give a tablespoon of chicken breast, that's probably like 10 calories. So just goes to show you that, excuse me, fats are very, very calorie dense. Fats are calorie dense. So some examples of these different sources of energy, and that's how I'm looking at this, is energy. Obviously, we look at food as something that's pleasurable, but food is our energy. That's how we get all of the energy, and not just energy as we dictated, but the things that help repair our cells with protein. That's how we get it in. So protein, protein sources of this could be chicken, could be pork, beef, Greek yogurt, eggs. There's pea plant sources of protein. If you're talking about veggie sources, tofu is a good one. Cheese, I think I mentioned milk, all these different things. There's lots of different sources of protein. Carbs, examples of this would be stuff like fruits, vegetables, breads, pastas, legumes are actually high in all of them, but those are pretty high carb. Those would be like beans. Those would be some examples of carbs. And then fats. So we have peanut butter, we have nut butters, we have oils, regular butter. Trying to think, avocado oil, anything that's oil. Believe that covers it. There's a lot more fats. You could look this up online too and see. There's probably a lot of sources of fat that you may not even realize were good sources of fat, but they are. So some also last key points with these different foods. Protein in itself is very filling. It's very satiating. So if you're trying to lose weight or manage obesity and all these different things, having a high protein diet, so finding those sources that you like, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, chicken, all these different things, and eating those a lot will actually help to keep you more full, which can help to monitor your calories a lot better and help you to lose weight. Because as we discussed, calorie balance or weight management is due to our overall calorie intake. Carbs that are high in fiber, like stuff that's leafy greens or vegetables that are very, very green, so broccoli, asparagus, spinach, all these different things, also are very high in fiber. So, in addition to fruits and whole grains, I forgot to mention as well, these things also can be very, very high satiety, high filling. So if we're thinking about two things we can do to help with our weight loss and obesity goals, having higher protein, having higher fiber stuff allows you to fill your stomach up more, make you feel more full, so you're not going to overeat on something like a Pop-Tart, which two Pop-Tarts have 400 calories. After you eat one of those, like I know myself personally, I feel like I haven't even eaten anything, and I'm gonna go eat some more food. So just kind of a take home. Last thing to mention about this, taking in food, high calorie foods are usually high in both carbs and fats with little fiber. And this is a key point to note. And as I just mentioned with the Pop-Tart example, why a lot of people will overeat on stuff like Pop-Tarts, junk food, all these processed foods, usually they are high in carbs, high in fats, low in fiber, and a lot of them have some different things that have been done to it in the processing that actually basically tell your body that you haven't even really consumed that much nutrients. So they taste good, they make you crave more, but at the same time, your body doesn't feel like it's been satisfied. So very interesting thing there. That's taking in food. Let's talk about burning energy. How is energy burned? And this is a big part in weight loss, but how is energy burned? If we can find out or talk about how energy is burned, we can hopefully navigate a little bit easier in the process of weight loss. So energy, 3 different ways we talk about energy being burned: your basal metabolic rate, your physical activity throughout the day, and also the thermic effect of food. So basal metabolic rate is about 50 to 60% of your overall calories, and this essentially is the amount of calories that your body needs to stay alive on a day-to-day basis. So just stay awake, proper brain function, to keep your muscles alive, to allow you to literally just, if you sat in bed and did nothing, to keep you alive. And believe it or not, there's actually a large amount of cell processes that happen just when you're sitting and doing nothing. So 50 to 60% of your calories is a large amount of calories that are basically from nothing. And when it talks about weight loss and obesity being genetic, this is one of the big driving forces. Your basal metabolic rate, for the most part, is genetic. There are a few different ways that you can increase this very slightly, but for the most part, this is the genetic thing. So when you're talking about being dealt a hand of cards where it's like, okay, I'm more prone to obesity, potentially a little bit if we're talking about basal metabolic rate. Some people are going to have one that are a little bit higher, some are going to be a little bit less, but just know basal metabolic rate eats up the most amount of your calories, and there is very little you can do about it. One of the things that I mentioned that you can actually use to improve your basal metabolic rate very, very slightly is by building muscle. Building muscle burns more calories at rest. So if you think about it, you can build muscle, and right now, if I have any bit of muscle on my body, that's burning calories doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. So the more muscle mass you have, essentially you're going to be able to burn more calories at rest, but this is something you actively have to do, which is why I kind of put it in with basal metabolic rate, but it is sort of a activity lifestyle intervention. But just know that once you build muscle, that's literally burning calories forever, which is cool, assuming you keep lifting weight, right? The next portion of where are we burning calories from comes from physical activity. This comes from about 20 to 30% of our physical activity through the day, or excuse me, 20 to 30% of the calories we burn come from physical activity. And this can fluctuate a lot from individual to individual. There's going to be some people who are completely sedentary, some people who are out running marathons, and this is something to note when it comes to physical activity and burning calories. It is very adaptable and also it is the most changeable. So two different things we need to unpack there. It's the most adaptable and the most changeable. So when you're talking about physical activity, you can go start running a mile every day and you will burn more calories. Your body will probably lose some body fat, but you will also adapt to that very quickly. You will adapt to that and your body will start burning less calories doing this activity because your body actually becomes more efficient at it. So that's one thing to note. Why a lot of people hit weight loss plateaus is because they are doing a certain amount of activity and they hit a point where they can't do anything else. Or they hit a point where they're not losing any more fat. Well, it's because your body has gotten used to it. Your body has simply not needed to burn as much calories because it can handle the load, handle the stress. It is adapt. But it's also the most changeable. So if you think about it, if I'm somebody who's very sedentary, I don't do a lot of physical activity, I can literally right now go out and run a mile. That's very changeable, and that's a super big driver force in talking about things that will improve your overall weight loss to help you decrease obesity and feel better in your life, assuming you're dealing with that, is by doing these things of physical activity. So they're the most changeable, but they're also the most adaptable. So when you're talking about the biggest levers we can pull to actually improve our weight loss and our body weight, this is going to be one of the huge things. Activity is one thing. I would say there's something more important is in the amount of food you're eating, but activity is a good thing to start. Cardio versus weight training. This is something I wanted to talk about. A lot of people think that cardio will allow you to lose weight, and it will, but as we just mentioned, it is very, very adaptable, as in you'll adapt to the demands that will be placed when you do cardio very quickly, and your body will start burning less calories. But if you resistance train, gain some muscle, as we just discussed, your body will actually burn those calories at rest once you gain muscle, which is a really, really cool thing. So weight training is a super, super huge lever to pull with obesity. Add some weights in. Another thing that I wanted to mention is this thing called NEAT. NEAT is described as non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And basically when we're talking about NEAT, this is the different activities that you do on a day-to-day basis that will burn calories that you don't even realize. So somebody who fidgets a lot, somebody who is constantly pacing back and forth, somebody who's maybe stressed throughout the day. These are all things that would be constituted in NEAT. And individuals who have a very high NEAT are usually people who are often seen as skinnier. Maybe it's harder for them to gain weight. What you'll often find is a lot of these people are fidgety. They can't sit still. They burn so many extra calories just from sitting, doing, fidgeting, all these different things on a day-to-day basis. In fact, you can burn almost 500 extra calories a day. People do this a day. And if we look back to the weight loss earlier, 500 calories is a huge thing on a day-to-day basis if you're trying to maintain your weight and lose weight. So that's a huge thing. Last thing, thermic effective food. You may have not realized this, but the thermic effective food basically describes that you will burn calories from eating food, which is pretty cool. So protein burns the most calories when you're eating it. The thing about this is that there's really a minimal difference in high protein intake. So say you're like, okay, protein burns the most amount of calories, so I'm just going to eat all protein. Simply because it's going to burn so many extra calories and I'm going to burn so much extra fat off my body. That isn't really the case. It's a minimal difference, but it is something to note that protein does take more energy to actually burn itself. So in summary, the 3 ways that we can burn weight or our body burns weight is through the basal metabolic rate, which is the energy to keep us alive. That has the most. Physical activity, that's stuff like running, moving throughout the day. 20 to 30% of your calories are burned through that. Very highly changeable, but also highly adaptable as well. Thermic effective food, that's just the calories it takes to burn the food that you can consume. So I just wanted to take a quick note. If you are enjoying this little podcast and learning some more about obesity right now, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We help individuals of all abilities improve their knowledge about the fitness, health, and gym industries, and just help to get everybody collectively more into physical activity like so. All right, we're gonna dive in now to the next portion of this. We're gonna talk about actual obesity. So what is obesity in general? And obesity gets this negative connotation where people almost bring into a moral aspect of it. So they think that calling somebody obese is a shot at their life, right? We're making fun of them. And I don't look at it this way. Obesity is essentially like a medical determination. It's almost like a fact. It's very similar to calling somebody poor. Poor has a very negative connotation behind it, but it's simply describing that person as having very little money. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about obesity. So there is nothing, we shouldn't stigmatize people who are obese. We should look at it as a medical term, a medical thing that we can address and hopefully make better. So what is obesity? Obesity is simply the excessive amount of body fat, usually around the midsection, but as you get incredibly obese and even more large than your body is able to handle, you're actually going to start noticing around areas like your arms, your face, your butt. All these different areas will have excess adipose tissue or body fat. And we discussed earlier in the podcast the different sources of that fat. So this is mainly subcutaneous fat, which you can see that's on the outside of your skin. When it comes to body weight, specifically when it comes to obesity, this is dictated by BMI, or it's usually calculated by BMI. And I put a link to a BMI calculator in the description so you can actually check and see what your BMI is and see if you're normal weight, overweight, or obese. Once you can check that, you can truly classify yourself if you're in a healthy or not healthy weight. So go ahead, take some time, check out that calculator in the description where you can see your current BMI. So when it comes to BMI, this is basically a ratio of your height to body weight, and they give you a calculation. That calculation, if it is greater than 30, you are considered obese. 25 to 30 is considered overweight. Anything below that is going to be either a normal weight or underweight. We're not going to go into the underweight category because this is about obesity, but if the number in the calculator for BMI is over 30, just know you are at obese. This is one way to look at it. What's getting more looked at too is also the waist circumference as well. So there's some individuals who are very muscular who might be considered overweight on the BMI category. But if you actually take their waist circumference, they are not considered that overweight or unhealthy. So when it comes to waist circumference, this is another way to check for obesity. 40 inches or 102 centimeters for male, or 35 inches and 89 centimeters for female is going to be what we consider as being obese. So if you take your waist circumference with one of those little tape measures and you're over that for those different categories, you'd be considered in the obese category. And a lot of times people look at individuals who are obese and they're like, that doesn't look very attractive. It's very cosmetic based, right? They see the excess body weight and they think basically that's why somebody would want to lose weight. They want to look better. And that is a huge driving force in losing weight and becoming less obese. But there are a lot of things under the hood or in our body that are actually going on as well. Some of these poor health outcomes from being obese: heart disease, joint issues, joint discomfort, high blood pressure, chronic inflammation. We talked about earlier that fat around your organs leads to chronic inflammation long term. Poor sleep, diabetes, even mental health issues can be tied to some of this. I didn't even mention this in my notes, but increased healthcare costs. You think about all these different things I just mentioned. These are things that are potentially stemming from obesity. And if you're talking about obesity in general, This is something that is extremely preventable, which is what we're going to move into the next section. So the next session, why do some people become obese? Why do some people become obese? As we discussed earlier, there are basically no differences in how you lose weight. So energy or weight loss is done through energy restriction, as in you're eating less calories per day than you burn. So why is it that some people are seemingly obese and some people can seemingly eat whatever they want and they really gain no weight? I want to give you a few statistics first, just before we get in. These are from the World Health Organization, just talking about obesity in the world. So obesity rates have tripled since 1975. It's pretty staggering. In 2016, more than 650 million obese and 650 million people were classified as obese in the world, and 40% of people were considered overweight. That is huge. That is almost 1 in every 2 people, or 50% of people. We're almost coming to the point where if you meet 2 people out in public, one of them are going to be overweight. And overweight doesn't have quite the same concerns as obesity when it comes to heart rate, heart issues, high blood pressure, diabetes, all these different things. But it is a risk factor. Individuals who are overweight, shocker, are actually more at a risk of becoming even more overweight at some point and becoming obese. So that's a huge risk factor. 40% of people are overweight. This next statistic is really staggering and kind of shows the importance of public health, not just for ourselves and adults, but for younger individuals as well. 39 million children under 5 are overweight. 39 million children under 5 are overweight. And as we just discussed, that's a risk factor to become obese. That's a lot. That's a lot of children under 5. And that's really shocking, kind of scary when you think about the fact that individuals who are younger like that, they don't really know what's going on. They don't know that their health is being neglected. And if they have parents and individuals who are taking care of them who don't know it either, they're basically being dealt a cards in a losing game. They can't win. So they're being really set up for failure, which is why I think it's so important to look at all this. So next portion, we're going to talk about the actual how. Why are some people obese and why some people aren't? This, as we mentioned, is from energy balance issues, which is often kind of stemmed to appetite regulation. So some people are able to regulate their appetite or their feelings of being hungry or simply wanting food better than certain individuals. And this can come from 3 different reasons. This is kind of how I conceptualize obesity and weight gain in general: biological issues, psychological issues, and even social issues. So we're going to talk about what each of these things mean in just a second. Excuse me, I got a little bug in my throat, so it's been tough getting through this, but we're working through it. So biological issues that lead to appetite regulation can be stuff like lower leptin levels. Leptin is your satiety hormone that actually helps you keep full. And as we mentioned earlier, different things that help with satiety are protein-rich foods, high fiber foods, those different things. But there are certain individuals who might have lower leptin levels just from simply being born that way, where they can't be as satisfied as easy. Their body doesn't secrete leptin quite as well. Higher ghrelin. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone. If you are somebody who is obese or overweight, you might have slightly higher ghrelin hormones, which make you feel hungry more frequently. Also, another biological reasoning to become overweight or obese: some people do just store fat a little bit better, or I shouldn't say better, easier. There are certain subcategories of demographics where certain individuals based off of ethnicity actually store body fat better. So this tells you very is genetic. Also, a huge thing to note, some people, they may store fat easier in different areas. So the people who store the fat in all the right places, if you will, these are the people who might be, genetically gifted in their storing fat. People who store fat instead of around their stomach, maybe they store it around their butt a little bit more, just in areas that aren't normally seen quite as well. Also, let's think about just cavemen biology. So when it comes to obesity and weight gain, our body is playing off of genetics from a long time ago. We're playing off genes from when we were cavemen. And these genes were meant to keep us alive in a time with very little food, very little predictable food, I should say, where you need to actually store a lot of fat to remain alive. And those who did not actually would die out a lot easier. So these genes are something that we've evolved to over time. So although obesity is a huge concern, we're kind of, for the most part, fighting our genes. And that is extremely hard when you try to start fighting biology. So just something to note there. Next thing, psychological issues. Psychological and social issues, these are the next two portions of weight gain and specifically obesity and why some people are obese. This is not talked about very much, but psychological reasons. Low self-esteem, poor body image. This is something that I kind of look at as hopelessness. Somebody might feel like they can't do anything about their obesity or weight gain, so they're just hopeless. They're not going to be able to change anything, and they say, "Oh, it's just genetics." It might be genetics a little bit, but the hopelessness and low self-esteem and poor body image can actually lead to more issues. As we look at the appetite regulation portion of this, would it be easier for somebody who has a higher self-esteem to feel okay eating a certain amount of food? Obviously, right? But if that same person has a cupcake in front of them, they eat it and they're like, "Oh, well, this is just who I am," they're probably just going to go eat more food anyway. That's a huge issue with it. Some people are predisposed to different disorders. As we know with alcoholism, some people might have a gene variant which makes them more susceptible to over-consuming on alcohol and becoming an alcoholic or having alcohol overuse disorder. This is kind of the same thing for individuals who are overeating. There might be hidden compulsions and disordered eating habits that are kind of deep and psychological that can really lead to becoming obese, becoming overweight, and having a tough time managing your overall body. Okay, last thing, the social and environment aspect of eating disorders. This is a huge driver, and this is something that I find extremely very fascinating because we can change this a lot. When we're talking about things to do to not become obese, to lose weight, and to maintain our weight the best we can, the social environment, as in how we set up the environment around us, can play seriously one of the biggest roles. Because if you change your environment, it's going to hopefully at some point change your biology and psychology, so it's a never-ending circle. But some of the things when it comes to social environment, where do you work? Do you work at a fast food place? Or do you work at a health food store, right? Obviously, you can imagine if you're in a fast food environment where you're just smelling chicken all day and the people who work there probably don't care about their health quite as much. That's going to cause a huge social issue because you're setting that environment up around unhealthy food, and it's the norm to eat unhealthy food, and it's my break, so I'm going to go have some chicken tenders on food versus a chicken tenders for lunch versus a salad, right? Family and friend pressure. How does your family look? Does your family care about their health? Does your friends, every time you go out with them, do you go out to get coffee and maybe just like a bagel, or do you go out and drink for 4 to 5 hours at a club on the weekends? right? These are going to be very, very different things that you can change. You can change this environment, but the environment is a huge thing, especially family and friends, because a lot of us, again, we talked about biology, we are so ingrained to do things that will keep us alive. Having friends, having family, keeping them happy is something that will ultimately help to keep us alive. Or it did a lot of years ago, and we're still kind of playing off that same biology. So a lot of times, to appease your friends and your family, you might not want to eat that extra piece of cake at your birthday dinner, or you might not want to go out and party and drink a bunch of empty calories with your friends. But if they want you to, or if they make you feel bad about it and almost guilt trip you, guess what? You're going to have a much, much more difficult time managing your obesity, managing your weight, just because of that simple environment. So the next portion is home setup. So how does your home setup look like when it comes to food? Do you walk into your fridge and there's literally just junk food on the top shelf, or do you have fruits and vegetables visible when you first open it? When you look at your countertops, are there just desserts and cookies and cakes all littered on your countertop, or is there fresh fruit visible for you to see? These are all things that are incredibly easy to change in your overall home, overall basically environment that's going to lead you towards better weight loss goals, better weight management goals. A funny story I should mention, one of the bosses I had at a previous job, they had a professor who was very, very short, and she couldn't reach the top shelf of her cupboard. So she put all of her cakes, cookies, and snacks up on that top shelf, and also put a step stool at the bottom of her house in her basement. So anytime she needed or wanted to get a snack or a treat or something, she had to be mindful about it, and she actually had to go all the way down the stairs, grab the step stool, come all the way back up, place the step stool, reach up, and then she redid it again. So it just goes to show you how powerful you can get with these different environment tweaks. Think about how easy it would be to diet and lose weight and not overall become obese if you didn't have any junk food in the house. Shocking, right? But if you don't think that far ahead of, oh, this is going to be much harder for me when I bring this bag of chips home, when I bring this box of cookies home, it's just something people don't think of. So it's going to take a little more attention. Work and life environment, we kind of talked about that. You can be in a place where eating healthy, maybe taking walks during your lunch break is a social norm. It's going to be much easier for you to maintain your overall weight and hopefully help you to decrease any overweight symptoms or obesity symptoms. Where you live is a huge thing. Let's think about this. If you're going to work or you're just going out into the world to get groceries, how many fast food places do you drive by? A lot. I know myself personally, I do. A lot. So that's one of the things you're feeling. Also, you go out, how many different gyms do you drive by? Fitness centers do you drive by? Health centers do you drive by? Probably not that many. This is a huge, huge thing when it comes to environment. So if you're in a place where a gym's right next door, a smoothie place is right next door, you can get these healthy options, you're setting your environment up so much better for you to actually maintain your weight and overall decrease the chances of becoming obese. How you cope with stress. How you cope with stress. Excuse me, that's in the next section, I apologize. Looking up ahead. Hot and cold weather. So this is something I find interesting in hot weather situations. So maybe out in Florida, stuff closer to towards the equator. Tough to pronounce that, I guess. The equator, it's actually less likely for you to overeat on food. People who live in these climates and situations don't eat quite as much when it comes to overall food. Colder weather, you typically do eat a little bit more, just from statistics. Is physical activity a norm? This is a big, big thing. So let's think about the warm weather examples like Florida and all these different places. If it is normal for you to go out and go for a walk, as in literally everybody's doing it, all your friends are doing it, all your family's doing it, going out to the beach and spending some time throwing frisbee with your family, friends, kids, etc. If that's a normal activity, the chances of you being able to maintain your weight better, being able to eat less is going to be so much easier. As we can see here, all these different environmental things on top of psychological things, on top of biological things, stacked together can really, really persuade somebody to have a difficult time monitoring their energy balance versus somebody who maybe has a very ease of access to healthy food. They have a gym at their home. They basically design their life in a way that makes it so much easier to be physically active. And that's kind of one of the big take-home points I want you to think about is, what is a few ways that I can change my environment to make eating healthier, losing weight, getting into the gym more easier? What are some ways I can change my schedule, change my life to make that easier? Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little more in the last section here. So if you're still with me, thanks for joining me. Let me know in the comments, what's your favorite thing we've talked about so far? But what can you do if you are obese or want to lose weight or maintain weight? This goes for literally anyone, but this podcast was specifically kind of about obesity and maintenance for that in general. The biggest thing that you can do is focus on the controllable things. And you're probably saying, okay, Logan, great. What's controllable? Controllable things, the amount of calories you eat. By far the most important driver of weight loss. I've mentioned this so many times, but please, please, please remember this. Weight loss is dictated by calories in versus calories out. If you can eat less calories than you burn on a day-to-day basis, you will lose weight, no matter what you eat. Amount of calories, you can control that. You have so much power. Types of food you eat. As we just mentioned, you can lose weight eating some of these junk foods, but they make it tougher. So I would highly recommend to eat stuff that's higher in protein, higher in fiber, more satiating, all these different things, because they make it easier to manage your overall calories. So you can control the types of food you eat. You can control your work and life environment. If you are in an environment that's high stress, you're in an environment where people are always doing unhealthy habits like smoking, drinking, not going to the gym and taking care of yourselves, you can change these things, and you should change these things. If you really, really want to take care of your health, make it a priority, especially moving into 2023, these are huge, huge levers that you can pull to improve your overall wellness, your health, and feelings of vitality. Where you live and willingness to use nearby resources. So as we discussed with the environment, if you live right next to a gym, and I'm not saying everyone literally go cancel your rent right now, move out just so you can live next to a gym, but think about it. If there's a place that's closer in town to a grocery store where you can get healthier foods, and maybe it's a little bit closer to a gym, you don't have to pay maybe anything extra when it comes to rent or mortgage. If health is a priority for you, if not becoming obese and maintaining your weight is a priority, these are things you need to consider and should consider. How you cope with stress. If you even try to cope with stress, right? A lot of people are so stuck in their day-to-day basis that they don't even think about stress management, but this is something that you can control. Do you meditate? Do you take time off work? Do you take social time to mentally recharge, either by yourself or with friends? Do you take time to do all these self-care mental relaxation activities? If you do, you're going to find it much easier to maintain your overall calories, maintain your weight, not become obese. You can control how you cope with stress, but that's the important thing. Try to cope with it. Try to cope with it. The last thing, how much activity you get. You can fully control how much exercise you get. This isn't easy, but as I just mentioned, you can kind of go through a few of those environmental factors to make it a little bit easier for yourself. Maybe try to make some slight changes and make it easy. Make it easy. Make it easy, make it attractive. That's one of the big things. Atomic Habits, James Clear, he talks about make it easy, make it accessible. So for long-term success, this is going to be kind of the biggest take-home points. Daily behaviors. You need to be focusing on small daily behaviors that you can follow that don't take a lot of work to think about, don't take much to overall do, that will lead you to losing weight. So let's think about this. What are some daily habits that you can do every single day to help you lose weight? Eating more filling foods that are higher in protein, higher in fiber. Not bringing in junk food into the house. That's a daily behavior you can do. That's an inaction. Limiting liquid drinks and exercising frequently. These are all habits you can do daily. When I say liquid drinks, I actually mean calorie drinks. So liquid calorie drinks, so stuff like sugary sodas, even fruit juices, stuff like that. Those are so easy to change to something that's diet or even just completely change to water, and you will be not consuming so many extra calories just from all those different sources, right? So that's a behavior. That's a small change. You can do that every day. Exercising frequently every day. Meeting people who appreciate health. This is a huge, big point to note about having a gym membership. That can be beneficial for some people. You have that community. You have basically people who are encouraging you to be healthier, encouraging you to be better. Not just for your physical health, because you're meeting there to work out, but also your mental health. And as we just mentioned with stress management, that's going to be a huge thing as well. So those are just a few ways to have daily things to lead you to that weight loss. But all in all, biggest things when it comes to obesity, remembering that calories are the most important factor. Biology or genetics does have a component into obesity and weight gain, but it's a small component. You can do a lot of things that are controllable or in your hands to help to lead you to weight loss, and to try to think about what's a long-term, easy behavior I can do every day that will lead to that weight loss. What's something small I can do for weight loss? And that's what I want to have you consider as you end this. What's one small thing that you can start doing today for the next 7 days, for the next month, that will help you to lose weight? Thanks again for watching this video. Hopefully you learned something. Please comment down below your favorite tip or thing you've learned. Otherwise, I'm going to link a video on dieting and actually losing weight without counting calories that hopefully you will enjoy as well. Thank you so much, and we will see you in the next one.